A woman needs love just like you do. And those are solid words from Ray Parker Jr. A woman needs love. And this is the show that shows women love every Wednesday from 11 till 11:55. Now, the love is not limited to that time, but we discuss every and any issue that affect women every Wednesday from 11 till 11:50. You are welcome to the station that loves music and loves life. We are Smooth 98.1. And the name of the show is called Soul Sisters. Well, I am called Oluwaseun. Now, if you're following us across all social media platforms, you would have seen the flyer, meaning you have an idea of what the discussion will be about this morning. And if you're a part of our WhatsApp family, it means you have also seen that flyer on our WhatsApp status. But in case you want to join the family, you can give us a follow on Instagram and Twitter at Smooth981FM. On Instagram is at Smooth981 without the FM. On WhatsApp, if you want to send a message for us to add your contact, that will be 0809-444-0981. Send Fajo on WhatsApp. I see you coming through already. Good to have you there. And I'm guessing you're driving. So please be careful out there because it's raining cats and dogs right here where I am. Now, that said, we are talking about Motherhood 101. We're talking about the questions that new moms ask and maybe the confusion. They've never been this path before. There are times they've gotten so much information about raising a baby, having a baby, but sometimes some things are experienced and you'll get to the point where you ask, well, they didn't tell me this part before, and things like that. So we are going to be clearing some confusions and most importantly, answering some questions on the minds of new moms and how they can navigate motherhood, which is why we'll call the conversation this morning Motherhood 101, the pediatrician's point of view. Now, who is in a better position to discuss the health, the wellness, the immunity of your children than a pediatrician, especially one who's passionate about the topic of raising children and helping them to have holistic well-being. So not just health-wise, but also in terms of their development and how they build literacy skill, which these days reading and cultivating the desire in the minds of children or in children generally seems to be such a Herculean task. And that means she's also an author of many books for children. So please welcome a passionate pediatrician, author, and advocate for children's holistic well-being, Dr. Titilayo Kayode-Alabi. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can
Ah,
hear you.
great. I didn't hear you for a bit. Thank you for joining me and being my guest this morning. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so I just want to dive right in. And this is where I'm coming from. I remember having my nephews. I have three nephews. One of them, the middle one from my elder sister. Anytime they resume school, that boy always comes with a cold. That boy always has a cough. And at some point, he felt like he was going to be on permanent, uh, maybe vitamin C or those supplements. So I imagine a new mom being in such a situation has never had a baby before then, and then now has a baby that has to go back to school because now we know that children are back to school, and the child constantly have their nose running and they have a cold or they have a cough. So how can you help build your child's immunity such that they are immune from those things flying around, or maybe those things that other children bring to the crèche or the nursery school or kindergarten?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Thank you. Okay, well, this is a common scenario that you find in amongst children, especially when they go to school. And the reason why I can say this is that at the clinic, it shows during the school periods, you find that a lot of them come with catarrh and cough, some fever. And then you find that reduces when they are on holiday. So it's obvious that something happens in the schools or in the crèches. So how can a mother help build a child's immunity? I believe that this starts right from the time the child is born, by exclusively breastfeeding the child. So it all starts with food. A lot of emphasis is now being placed on the roles that food play as medicine, in the sense of it helping us prevent disease, and even in some cases, helping us to also, treat diseases. So exclusive breastfeeding has been found to be top-notch when it comes to building immunity. And then, of course, that means breastfeeding up to 6 months with breast milk alone, without water, without any added food or any other supplement, except if it was prescribed by a physician. And of course, by the time the child is supposed to be weaned, to adult meal, then it becomes important that we wean them properly. So what do I mean? You find now that emphasis is also being placed from company manufactured cereals to even homemade cereals, which you on your own as a mother can pack with all the density, all the nutrients that you really want it to contain. And then, of course, a lot of emphasis on fruits and vegetables, because these contain all the vitamins, also the minerals that the child needs. So you would see that I'm not saying so much about giving them multivitamins as drugs or as tablets or as syrups. I'm saying food starting exactly from when the child is born. Then, of course, what else can we do? Vaccines. It is very important that they should be vaccinated, because you find that some of these vaccines also protect against these common things that children may pick up. So it is important that every child should receive their vaccination right from the time of birth, and then, of course, till depending on the immunization schedule that we are following. The Nigerian one is present, and then, of course, some hospitals are now even adopting other vaccines that are not commonly given in Nigeria, but are available. Some hospitals are already doing that and incorporating them into their own immunization schedule. So then, of course, we should learn to teach our kids early. Even the etiquette, like for example, the cough etiquette, you start teaching them from home. You don't necessarily wait for them to go out and then spread the disease. So you teach them to cough into their elbow, to, hand hygiene. You emphasize hand hygiene, even for a child. So it doesn't mean the child is too small. It's too small. You start it right from home, because, of course, when they go out, then what happens? They also learn to protect others from the disease. And if your child is sick, the best thing really is keep them away from school. I hope that these are useful.
Yes, very, very useful. Thank you so much. Now we'll take a breather when we come back. I like the fact that you highlighted the vaccines. So for a new mom who's just navigating these waters, what are those specific vaccines they ought to take, and what will be the impact? I mean, when you take a child for vaccination, what happens? Is there something that you see that you should not be worried about, or if there are some things that you see you should go back to the hospital where you took this vaccine from? So we'll get into that right after this. So if you're joining us for the first time, we are helping new moms to navigate motherhood. And my guest is a pediatrician. Do stay with us. And there is although that one I always try, so when it concerns media conversation, I try to shy away from it because it's quite controversial. The different conspiracy theories about vaccines and sometimes inhibiting some developmental milestone, especially touching speech and social developments. I'm yet to get to the bottom of that, but I hope that one day we're able to put that thing to bed.
Yeah, it's like you said, there are a whole lot of conspiracies and then some negative news. Some people even believe that vaccines have been given to eradicate Africans, like to kill them or something, or some are being given to like affect, probably disrupt their fertility so that
Fertility.
we don't continue to multiply ourselves and take over the whole world. But vaccines are important. We can't, what people don't seem to understand is that a vaccine is a drug, and every drug even as simple as vitamin C, as simple as paracetamol has its own side effects. Are we live already, or is still the break?
So we're about to get back on radio, but we're live on YouTube.
Okay. So
So
vaccines are important. You can't take them out. You can't
okay, so
take
I
them.
might need to interrupt a little because we need to get back on radio.
Okay.
You're welcome to listen to the conversation we are having now. You can even go further and watch us on YouTube. That is youtube.com/smooth 91 FM Lagos. Again, youtube.com/smooth 91 FM Lagos. But if you're already on YouTube, it means you just need to search for at smooth 91 FM Lagos. And you find us right there. You'll see my face and the face of my guest, someone who is dedicated to clearing misinformation and lack of access to specialized care on children's health. And as a result of that, she founded Roots Childcare. That's a platform dedicated to addressing these challenges and also to reduce morbidity and mortality, especially among children under 5 years old. She's also an author and she is a passionate pediatrician. And I'm referring to Dr. Titilayo Kayode-Alabi, who is having the conversation with me this morning on how new mothers can navigate the waters of early motherhood. So we started by telling you about how you can build immunity in your children. And she said you start right from exclusively breastfeeding. And Dr. Titilayo, I am asking on behalf of the working mothers who are quite occupied. How do they exclusively breastfeed and make sure that it's just breast milk? Then the other side, remember that they're new mothers, and you have omugo. And some people come in and say, hey, the child is thirsty, give the child water. The child is maybe feels weak, give the child glucose water. How do you deal with those things?
Okay, so how do you exclusively breastfeed as a mother that is working and busy? Okay, I know that it's actually quite a lot of challenge, like to get that done. But is it possible? Yes, it's a big yes. It's possible to exclusively breastfeed your children. First, you had mentioned the first thing that came to my mind, and which is support. Every mother needs the support. And you said omongo, which we would find naturally happening in Africa and of course in Nigeria. The support is important because every nursing mother needs someone who would be able to hold on to the child while she is able to relax, rest, and of course catch some sleep. And then of course food, because food, water, and rest without being anxious. These things then help you it helps the breast milk production so that that mother is able to give enough supply to the babies. Then what can be done from your own hand as a mother? You should remember that you can actually express your breast milk and refrigerate. So you can freeze, so you can express, and that's why I said they need the support, right? So with the support, they have those times when they don't necessarily have to hold on to the child. So a nursing mother can get enough time to do what? To express breast milk, and keep them in something like a breast milk bank or in the freezer, which are those times when you have to be at work. Either the child is with you at work or the child is at home, someone can breast and can feed with breast milk. Doesn't necessarily have to be coming directly from your breast. And then the other thing is that organizations are also being encouraged to provide a safe place like a crèche where babies can stay, where during the time when they are working, the mothers can actually just take like 10 to 15 minutes or 20 minutes and then breastfeed and of course return back to work. And don't forget that they don't have to resume immediately. They usually get like 3 to 4 months of break. So the time when the remaining period that you actually need to practice exclusive breastfeeding at work is like 2 to 3 months, which you may be able to navigate. And then how do you then undo the influence of
Exactly.
parents, of our grandparents, of our mothers and of probably our aunties and even the community. It is forced by being deeply rooted in the truth. And this is the gospel. Exclusive breastfeeding is key. It can't be negotiated. Yes, I understand that sometimes some children may need to have some drugs. They may not have their parents. They may, for example, people with HIV exposed infants may not necessarily be able to do exclusive breastfeeding, or they may have to be on breast milk substitute, depending on the parents' choices. And then some parents, well, a mother could have died for whatever reason, or have a terminal illness and she can't breastfeed. For those cases, yes, we understand. But the gospel is a child should be exclusively breastfed for 6 months. So first, being deeply rooted in these truths is important. And then being able to stand firm, and I advise sincerely that fathers should also know this, because you find that maybe my mother-in-law comes and she's telling me this, and I know the truth, but I can't speak up. But if my husband was aware, if he knew the truth, then he can say, no, mom, this is what we want to do for our child. And you can stick with it, because if the woman then speaks up, then it may look like, oh, she's rude or something like that. So it's first being deeply rooted, and then having the husbands, in the know. And then, of course, we continue to educate everybody. And recently I saw an advert, I think it was by the Federal Ministry of Health, I'm not sure. And it was on exclusive breastfeeding. And I was really impressed because, everybody gets to see that advert, especially if they have a TV. And it's not limited to Instagram, where my mom or another person's mom may not be on. But, on TV, it's easier, those news, those messages, like you are also promoting through Smooth FM. Do you understand? That's
Yeah.
8.1. So I guess that also passing the information, becomes important too.
Thank you. Now, your explanation is bringing up more questions because I'm going back again to that breastfeeding. It's totally important. So, what if a mother says, my child seems to have a large appetite and keeping up with breastfeeding seems to be hard. So, because of that, I'm infusing bottle, or I'm not producing enough breast milk. How do I navigate that?
So I'll start with the second one. Yes, we may actually find that some mothers are not lactating as much as they should. So when that happens, we need to find out what is happening. Okay, is it an anxiety thing? Because if you remember, I actually mentioned anxiety earlier. And I
Mm,
said, because that can actually, influence lactation. So you actually want to find out what is happening at home. Is she stressed? Does she have enough support? Is her husband or other family members supporting her? And then you then want to find out if, because if it is psychological, that can be helped. You get, I've had situations where I've had to like invite fathers, to the clinic and then speak with them. If you are able to do this for your wife, she may be able to actually lactate more. And then we also find that there's some food that actually influence or, lactation. So sometimes we introduce that. And then we also have lactation specialists, people who are trained specifically to help mothers, lactate better. So sometimes we may then need to like involve such people, into the process of why is this person not lactating. However, I have found that a lot of times it is not that the mothers are not lactating very well. It is
mm,
actually because either they are not experienced or sometimes they just do not want to do it. Let's take, for example, a mother says, my child feeds like almost everyone her, and I'm really tired, it's stressful. So because of that, I have decided that I am going to start breast milk substitute. And I'm saying, okay, let's try this. For example, let me see how you put the baby to breast. And then I see that the process of attachment to the breast is actually wrong. And it looks like the baby is not sucking on the area around the nipple. The baby is sucking on the nipple where it's just like sucking on the teeth of something. Meanwhile, the real place where the breast milk is stored is on that dark part around our nipples, which is the areola. So the baby's mouth, the lips are meant to be attached around that place. So I find that that may also be wrong. So I teach the mother, so and then I'm like, how many minutes does this child breastfeed? And I find that sometimes 5 minutes. and the baby is distracted. So I'm like, oh, your baby should actually feed 10 to 15 minutes on one breast and complete it on the second breast, another 10 to 15 minutes. So we are looking like at 20 to 30 minutes. So I found that
Wow.
by yes, so by actually educating mothers on the process of breastfeeding, we, in a number of cases, have been able to get them to stop using breast milk substitutes. And
Hmm.
then the other thing is, if you are actually struggling with it, like I said, you can express, you can actually pump out the breast, store it, and give something like a top up. So some children may be distracted and they may feed and then take off their mouth or get filled easily, partly because they're actually taking more hair because they're not attaching well than milk. So they become full early because hair will then take some space where the milk should be. So you find that in such cases, you can actually get them to express and use cup and spoon, which is preferred actually to bottle feeding. So some of these things can actually it can be addressed. Some mothers need the extra help, which we sometimes have to get for them, and some just need to be helped, with the process. Some need the mental support. You just find that all they need is to just encourage them because they really do not want to do it.
Hmm. There is an art to everything, including breastfeeding, and that's quite eye-opening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And I'm glad that the fathers are listening as well. So if you have any questions or any contribution, something you want to clarify, WhatsApp is very much open to your messages and the phone line is open to your calls. WhatsApp line is 0809 444 0981. I'll take that again. WhatsApp line just for your messages 0809 444 0981. If you're sending a message for the first time, please include your name and your location. And if you want to dial the number, it's 0201 448 9981. That's the number to dial. Chidozie on WhatsApp says, I love her emphasis on food being the medicine your body needs. It's what I call the science of food. The earlier this ideology is inculcated into the mind of our kids, that's the fact that everything we put in our mouth is tailored to our wellness, the less junk we'll grow up to consume as adults. But exclusive breastfeeding can be difficult too. 6 months will now seem like 2 years. I like the fact that Chidozie mentioned junks. We'll talk about that after this breather. So we have two things pending. We have vaccine and junks. And I say junks because the number of overweight children I'm seeing around these days is alarming, and we need to discuss that. So how can you prevent childhood obesity? Because it's not a sign of good living. It's not. We need to address that and maybe shake a little table. We'll be right back after this.
Love, love. My name is Adenike.
Sometimes in my head, I see some children and I'm already designing a diet sheet for them. Like, how can you allow your child be this big? It's like I'm showing my child love. If the love is killing them. Okay, maybe this is me just carrying somebody else's matter on my head. I think you lost my audio for a bit.
Yes, I did. I can hear you now.
Yeah. What sort of stupid how healthy is breast milk to men? Ah, God. Yeah, I saw it where they said breast milk is okay for people.
Well,
We're just going to touch that in passing. What? Even enough for the child already. You back on it.
Okay.
Love music and love life. You're listening to Soul Sisters. The time right now is 27 minutes past 11 o'clock, and we are having a very insightful conversation on motherhood, especially the early stages of it, for new moms who have not had any sort of experience. And my guest wears many hats. She's a doctor, she's an author, she's a children's teacher, she's a wife, she's a daughter, she's a friend, she's a sister. She integrates everything seamlessly to make sure that you have accurate information on raising your child well. And yes, she's a passionate pediatrician. Passionate because if you go to our social media page, you'll see so many things tailored towards giving you the right information. So now back to that question on ICE about preventing childhood obesity. Yeah, how can we prevent that? And maybe it's just me being overly, I don't know, anxious or being too pained about it that being fat or obese has been linked to good living and giving a child junks is linked to I'm showing my child love.
Okay. You just really, literally touched something that really gives me a whole lot of pain, a lot of concern, and I'm sure that um it's not just me, and I'm actually happy that despite not being in the health sphere, you have as a citizen, as a person, literally looking at it and wondering why are we having more overweight or obese children. And I practice in Abuja. And when I first moved here, out of like almost every 10, or this is not proven data, but I know that it is true. Out of almost like every 10 or 11 children that I see, I tell you the truth that at least 3 or 4 of them are obese. And you would find parents coming in and comparing an obese or overweight child with the normal weight sibling, and literally, no, talking to that little, the normal weight one, and being concerned that they are small.
No way.
Yeah. They're actually concerned that they are small and that they are not eating well, and they want me to prescribe multivitamins. And I refuse and tell them the overweight one really needs to shed some weight to be healthy. So you find that a lot of us are still not aware. We're not aware of the implication of the weight that we have, even in children. Initially, obesity and overweight was a problem for adults because, then we link it to hypertension, to diabetic and all. But you find that hypertension, diabetics is becoming increasingly prevalent in children also. So what do? We have a lot to do beyond just talking. We have a lot to do. Parents, beyond just being aware, we have a lot to do. And I tell you the truth, how can we help it? It starts actually from even us, because I've seen a few studies have shown that even the mother's prevalent weight in pregnancy actually influences the child's tendency to be obese. So it is actually important that for us as parents, even before we get married or then before we have children, that we should be healthy, because it ultimately affects or influences and impacts our kids. And then I will still not take breastfeeding away from this discussion because it starts from there. And then when we start to feed them with family diets, I think I rushed through it a bit. Of course, they need carbohydrates, they need protein, they need fats, they need water, they need minerals, and of course, they need vitamins. And all of these things, you find them in food. And then a lot of emphasis is then being placed on plant-based food compared to the animal-based ones. Okay, and you'll find that some of the things we knew about, for example, protein as a child and beans, you find that beans has some protein, but it doesn't have enough. I get what we had wrong then was protein is even more found in plant-based food. For example, chickpeas. For example, legumes. For example, so you'll find that you could actually incorporate more of those into the child's diet, and you're giving them more protein. And of course, egg is good because it also has some protein, and yogurt. But you would also see that we are going away from the yogurt that we know to the, Greek yogurt that is also pasteurized and has some form of benefits to the guts. So beyond food, then we start to talk about movement. Now, unfortunately, things have changed. And when I say movement, I usually don't say exercise for children. I say play. Because how do I tell a child, you have to exercise, you have to play. So how do we then balance play with them reading and being normal citizens? Because you expect them then to read, go to school and all. So you have to balance it because you really want them to get some form of jumping and playing ball and running. But the world that we have now has become increasingly insecure. So you don't want your children going to the park. Unlike times when we were younger, when you can actually go to the park and play, have children in the streets playing. You're even afraid that you may close your eyes a split second and the child is gone. But right there in the compound, they can play. They can have some play. They can play football. They can have some makeshift, they can even have plays related to, oh, I'm a mother, I'm the mother, I'm the father, like we used to do. Of course, you may not then want them to play with sand because we would cook sand and have the family setting then. But, you just still want them to get daily play. That's one. And second, then the other thing is sleep. Then you will be wondering, sleep, okay, what's sleep doing in the midst of all of this? But you find that getting just enough sleep is important for us to gain, to maintain good weight. And for kids, starting from the newborn period, the requirement for sleep is as high as 8 to 9 hours for school-age children now. Of course, for the newborns, they may sleep up to like 16 hours or even more, and then it continues to reduce. So are they getting enough sleep? Parents are either coming home late, even with their children sometimes, or because the children have to meet them, they stay up late. But you really want your children to go to bed early. You want them to go to bed early because that ultimately contributes to their ability to grow, and to grow well. So preventing obesity, it goes, and then you talk about junk food. So intentionality is about us just being determined. Okay, now I am aware. Like even as a pediatrician, some of these things were taught, but the emphasis was not so high. But over the years, you then find that there's a whole lot of emphasis on lifestyle. And the focus is then being shifted from parents and adults to children because we are finding alarmingly increasing rates of adult diseases, chronic diseases in children. And then pediatricians, coaches, health coaches, mothers, people are becoming concerned. And we have to like come together and be more intentional. It's not just about being aware, it's then about taking the steps, one step at a time. You can't shift it all, you can't change everything at once. You can't just suddenly wake up one day and say, no more pizza, no more this, no more that. Everybody, we are eating only plants. You are going to have some form of revolt. So, and you don't want that because if they revolt, then they would not cooperate with you. It becomes a tug of war. But you want everybody to be in the know. So it's about getting the family in the know, even the children, and telling them why they should eat healthy. Because my child is healthy, but goes to school and finds that his friend brings a pack of those juices. Meanwhile, maybe I give water or I make my own orange juice and I put it in a cup or a bottle and he takes to school and it's not fancy, right? And he's looking at his friends. So you need to be able to educate them so that just in case they have friends that make jest of them that can do that, then they're able to say, oh, you are even the one, taking the bad thing. Do you understand? So it's about also teaching them because I say kids are motivated. And that was why I wrote one of my books, Somtochukwu and Dawn Mediferring, because it's all about just health things that they can do, letting them know the importance of some of these things. It's not just, mommy said we should eat this. It's about, oh, if I do this, this is what it will do for my body. So that was why I wrote that book. So also educating them, because kids are motivated and can take the right steps when they are aware of the reasons why they should do so.
Thank you. That was excellently articulated. Thank you for the clarity. Now, that will lead me to my next question about picky eating. How do you deal with children who just decide, I don't want to eat whatever it is that you have brought? In fact, right from when you start complementary foods, some decide the kind of milk brand they want, or they decide the kind of things that they can stomach. Is there a natural explanation to that? Is it something that the mother has done that already formed their taste bud in one way or the other? How can you shape on their taste bud? How do you deal with picky eating in children?
Okay, so the first thing I wrote here is be patient. Okay, because you have to be able to differentiate what it means that a child is a picky eater from the child is trying to understand what you are introducing to him or her. Because remember, they were first introduced to something very fluid and smooth. And then all of a sudden, you're bringing some lumpy things to them. So you really want them to you want to be patient. You take it one step at a time and you go slowly. And then being patient also means that a child refuses the particular type of meal once. It doesn't necessarily mean you will take it off completely. And then it doesn't necessarily mean you have to present that food in the form that you take it. For example, I want to take pineapple. My child does not want to. I can actually integrate it in a way. I can integrate it into a smoothie or a juice. Of course, juices, they give us higher quantity of sugar in the sense of the fiber part of the fruit may be gone. But yes, it's still better than a refined or a processed juice that somebody called pineapple juice, which has just flavor and water and more sugar. So, and then you can make it into smoothies, which actually have some form of fiber in them. Or you can be sneaky. You can hide that thing that they just don't want to take into their soup and stew. For example, you can have a soup that is made up of fruits and vegetables only with some tomato, blended all together. You can use that for their jollof rice or for their what's it called? For their spag. Do you understand? So you can be sneaky about it. Do you get? And don't forget, be patient. Be patient, really. Sometimes you need to bring that food 10 to 20 times before that child understands the taste and is able to then go with it. And I've said the form. It doesn't have to be the same form that I would eat rice, that my child will eat it. I can still give it to him blended. I could decide to blend spinach. You will eat the spinach because you will still get the whatever it is that is supposed to give you. And then the other thing I said here is that we need to also then differentiate, is this child really a picky eater or has some form of allergic reaction to that food? Because you may just find that the reason why the child is not eating it is that something goes wrong with the whole system when the child takes it. So it's important that then we need to be able to differentiate, between the two so that we don't continue to introduce the food, causing more harm, most importantly to the gut. Okay, so we need to be able to differentiate that. And then the last thing I will probably say about picking eating is, as parents, we have to be good models. You need to demonstrate to them this food is good. This food that I'm eating is good. So I'm eating it with such joy. I'm chewing on cabbage or maybe broccoli. I'm chewing and I'm dancing, I'm smiling at the table, even if the child is looking at it. But over time, they get to realize that, okay, this may not be bad. And then introducing it early. Yes, some children would refuse it even as early as 6 months. But don't forget, as you continue to introduce it, they get to eat it. And play with colors. Play with colors, bring in different colors, because children are naturally attracted to colors. So they love colors. So it's, they would look at, okay, this is green. And for example, they are learning they're learning to identify colors. And you are bringing green, yellow, orange to them. I say, oh, bring green broccoli and white, maybe
Cabbage?
cauliflower. Yeah, cabbage. And then you are saying, oh, orange is orange. And then they're looking at it and they're like, okay, I could try this because it is interesting, it is fun. They don't feel oppressed to eat. They don't feel like they have to eat it by force. It's all about, just trying different things and then being patient, just being patient with them.
One of the things I'm hearing recurrently in your explanation is creativity. Parenting definitely takes creativity. And I wish all the mothers, and also the fathers, all the creative cells in them in order for them to bring this to life. Can you hear me? Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you now. Please, if you could repeat that.
I said one of the things I have heard recurrently in what you have said is creativity, that parenting definitely takes creativity and smartness. I remember coming across a video on the internet where a child needed to take a drug, but the child didn't want to take the drug. So they had to hide the syrup in a juice bottle and insert the straw. So they cut it from the back and they gave it to the child, making it to look like it's the juice, yet it was not. Ooh, well, all the best, all the very best. Now we'll take some messages on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And if you want to join in, you can ask your questions, send them to WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. Oluwaseun says, hi, Oluwaseun and Mrs. Kayode. How healthy is breast milk to men? I'm sure it's not healthy to men.
Coming back.
And I'm sure men have no business drinking breast milk, right?
Okay. Well, I'm not going to really delve into that, but yes, it's safe. Of course, it's breast milk. It's safe.
Leave breast milk for children. Thank you. That's it. Wilson says, good morning, Madam Oluwaseun. Extend my greetings to your guest as well. I appreciate the fact that she talked about junk food and all that, especially for babies that should still be breastfed. Does not make sense at all. Such can have a negative effect on the babies as they grow up. I honestly hope the mothers and expectant mothers are listening and should take caution. Thank you. Mr. says, good morning. This may sound silly, but could distractions affect the kids' breastfeeding? The use of mobile phones while breastfeeding, distributing the mother while disturbing the mother while feeding, among others. Ultimately, the child will not be able to complete the feeding session, just the way TV disturbs us while eating. Do you want to quickly answer that or touch on that?
Yes, that is, I'm not sure if it was completely a question or a contribution, because that is very important. If you remember, I think I mentioned distraction at a point, that the child is distracted and stops feeding. Because yes, phones, TV, it's really advocated that we should not have those on while feeding. We should actually have the TV off, and we should have our phones away at the table when feeding. So yes, kids could be distracted. And one of the things that we need to understand is our kids also come with their different temperaments. So a child may just be the very quiet one that stays exactly where you want them to stay. And then there's another one that is easily distracted, that is playful, that wants to see everything. So it's breastfeeding and hears a voice and like, what voice is that? So you find children like that, and you need to be able to identify that early so that you can help them. Yes, distractions can affect a child's ability to complete a feeding session. So we need to be able to, identify that and get rid of the distraction.
Thank you. And Mustafa further says, Oluwase, Mustafa, I'm hurt. I feel heartbroken that all these years you don't know my name. You're calling me Oluwase. It's Oluwaseun. We share similar thoughts about kids and weight. There is this notion where mothers are often concerned their babies should be bulky in size as evidence of being fed well. These are toddlers, so not even young kids. Our diets are changing to more Western and unnatural food, in which, in the long run, will be a source of diseases. Indeed, let thy food be thy medicine. Chidozie on WhatsApp says, I used to be very picky with onions in my food. I didn't like the fact that these big slices of onions were staring at me from the plate. So these days, when cooking my own meals, I chop my onions to very tiny little pieces, or even blend them when necessary, because I know onions is important. And he further says, a little bit of amala and a little bit of breast milk.
A man.
That's a man. What do you mean a little bit of breast milk and a little bit of amala makes the world go round? Leave these things for children. St. Faja says, it can be irritating now. Breast guinea. How do we treat some kids who stop breastfeeding on less than 2 months after birth? Important question.
So yes, I've also found that that can happen. So how then do we help such child? We can still continue to express, because the moment the child stops breastfeeding and we stop, then the breast milk would dry up. Because one of the stimuli for lactation, for us to continue to produce milk, is actually that there's some form of suckling on the nipple. So because it then sends some signal to the brain, and then helps the brain to produce, send signal to the breast, then to produce its milk. Okay, so we can continue to pump the breast for that child and not necessarily take off breast milk from that child just because he has stopped, taking it directly. So because of course, if the child stops breastfeeding early, the child is still going to take some milk. So rather than quickly jump into breast milk substitutes, we can continue to express and give our milk as the from cup and a spoon.
Okay, thank you. Oluwaseun has another question and says, are these akamu mixtures healthy for children? I mean, corn, millet, coconut, etc.
Yes, they are. They are healthy. Because the only thing I would say about our homemade cereals is, which I also, found out from research and then asking questions, is, of course, we don't want to sieve the milk, the cereals again. The best thing is when you blend them to be very smooth, so that you are giving them part of the bran, part of the cover of the corn or the millet or guinea corn or whatever it is that we are using, because those things also have some germ that help the gut. They have and then because they are also fermented, they are good for the gut health. So yes, they are not, if the I prefer that they should be made at home. So I even make my own pap in my home. We don't buy from outside. So I prefer that they should be made at home, because when you make them in the home, you are careful. You can even add extra things, and then you can add some sources of milk to to the um to the pap, and not necessarily have to add extra milk from outside. All of these things are even becoming expensive. So the earlier the better. We knew the natural alternatives that we can do on our own, the better for us.
Oh, wow. There are a lot of things we've not even got into. For instance, the issue of um the reading and balancing reading and screen time. There is also the issue of social skills and making sure that they're interactive. We didn't even get to talk on about that, as well as one you mentioned in passing that I was going to ask. Maybe I can as well do it now. That myth, I don't know if it's a myth or there is any truth to it, that when you carry a child for too long, you are in your arms, the baby will come really attached to you and would not want to maybe sleep on the bed or go with other people.
Mm. Okay, yeah, people say that. But what parents need to understand is, it is good that you bond with your child. It is good. I mentioned about temperament earlier, and I'm just going to probably use that to answer the question. Some children are naturally going to want to stay with you more, while some, even if you travel for 1 year, they don't care. When you come back, oh, mommy, you're back. Welcome. They are gone. So we we need to understand that we are going to have kids who would be naturally attached to us and those who would then not want to do that. And then we also need to understand that there's a particular age that children get to, that they have this stranger awareness, especially from 6 to 9 months, and it peaks around 9 to 12 months when they become overtly aware of strangers and they have this anxiety or separation anxiety. So we need to understand that that can happen, and it is not because we have carried the children. Yes, is it good that we should carry them? Yes, but do you want to continue to carry them all the time? No, because you also need some space. So sometimes all the child actually wants is to be in your corner. So you want to do things, you can put the child on a babysitter and you are, doing your thing. All the child wants is the awareness that there is an adult and they are safe. But carrying them encourages bonding. And I read the research that showed that babies who were carried more than the ones who were not, by the time they got to the age of 6 weeks, when they naturally cried the most, when almost every child, every baby cries the most, or when they get to that peak, those babies who were carried more had less cry, which is like completely opposite of what we believe. And then of course carrying them and carrying them when they're not crying is better and easier than when they already started crying and are difficult to console. So I'm not particularly in for when you carry them they become too attached, because I believe that it encourages bonding.
Thank you. Now, I would want us to quickly run through this last question, and it's on the topic of vaccination. So, what are some of those vaccines that new moms need to make sure their children take? And when they take them, is there any sort of reaction? Maybe they start to have some raised body temperature and all that. So, don't be scared when you see those things. So, quickly.
Okay, so starting from birth, they are going to have the BCG, the hepatitis B virus vaccine, and the oral polio vaccine. And then when they have 6 weeks, they would have the Penta 1, which is a combines 5 vaccines, and which is why it is called pentavalent vaccine 1. So it has they're going to have the pneumococcal vaccine, and then they would have oral polio vaccine 1. The first one they had at birth is oral polio vaccine not, that's a 0. And then they will have the inactivated polio vaccine at 6 weeks. Then when they have 10 weeks, they will then have Penta 2 pneumococcal vaccine 2, oral polio vaccine 2, and intermittent, okay, no, not the intermittent vaccine. Then at 14 weeks, they will then have Penta 3, pneumococcal vaccine 3, the intermittent inactivated pentavalent vaccine 2. So then at 6 months, at 9 months, at 12 months, 15 months, all of these are according to the National Program on Immunization. However, they will continue to have some form of some supplementary vaccines that are given from house to house, depending on what the Nigerian government finds, that is happening. So they may find that, oh, they need to give extra vaccines. They may come to the homes, and people should please encourage this and receive them with love. And then, of course, a child may have fever, may be fussy. That doesn't necessarily mean that the vaccine is bad. And sometimes when fever is too high, they may convulse. That in most of the time is even from the child's tendency, not necessarily because it is a complication of the vaccine or even of the infection. So what should we do? Calm them, If they are fussy, please don't rub the surface of the vaccine site. You would have been told at the hospital, you could use some cold compress if it's going to work. You could use some acetaminophen, paracetamol. And then, of course, if the child doesn't get better, then you need to come to the hospital. Like for the BCG, which is given on the left deltoid around this place, you may find something like a boil, which then later would give a scar. That boil is completely normal. We don't need to press it, rupture it. It will heal and leave a scar. It's also one of the signs that they received the vaccines and the body responded appropriately to it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Titilayo. That was very, very enlightening. And on the final note, I am going to take messages from Muste, who says, Oluwaseun, no vex. Now my phone autocorrect she. See, I'm not taking that. Send peace offering. And he said, I know a pre-independence baby who was breastfed for 4 years. 4 full years. Mothers were really determined, though. It's little surprise he's a doctor today. Then don't feed them with sense. Shout out to mothers who put their children in top view. A dad does not steal from his own home. That's for men who want breast milk. Yep, you heard that from a man. And he said, this was a great informative session. Looking to share the podcast link when it's ready. Thank you for the show. We need a curated course from the guest. Hope she has something of that nature. Someone documenting Ijile solutions. Yeah, so for people looking for more information about what you do, especially with a roots childcare, how can they find you?
Okay, so I am on Instagram at Dr. Titilayo Alabi, and then I am also there as at Root Book Up _ That is where you find my business aspect. And then for Dr. Titilayo Alabi, I do everything that has to do with my personal brand. I talk about children, I talk about women, I talk about health, and I talk about books, children literature.
Thank you. Mrs. Ola on WhatsApp says, I never liked onions as a child, but I can eat it raw now. See, this onions thing, I also was in the same WhatsApp group. In fact, till now, I'm in the WhatsApp group of Chidozie. I blend it finely or fry the heck out of it. It's just so as not to see it, but it's good. Thank you so much, Dr. Titilayo. This was a delightful conversation. I look forward to another conversation with you on the second part of these questions we didn't get to answer. Okay, and for those asking for the link or maybe to catch up with the conversation, you can go back to our YouTube page, and that will be youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You'd find it right there. And you'll find hashtag Soul Sisters 981, Motherhood 101, the pediatrician's point of view. And my guest, the pediatrician, has been Dr. Titilayo Kayode-Alabi. Later on, which is in some minutes time actually, it will be me playing you African music from 12 p.m. till 4 p.m. right here on Smooth 98.1. My name is Oluwaseun Olusegun.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. So I'm going to share the link with you in case you want to share it somewhere else.